What's going on, guys? Lizard Jesus bringing another Age of Empires mobile video. Today's video is a brand new series that I am excited to introduce to you all. This series that I am bringing to you all today is called the Hero Rewind series. Yes, welcome to the brand new series Rewind, where we go over old heroes. We'll go over old skills. We'll do all those things, and we're going to talk about heroes that I have covered in the past through in-depth reviews, such as Teamer, Guan. We're even going to go over Mansa Musa later on in the series. Not in this video, but as the series goes on. Boudica, Lagurtho. We're going to be taking a look at old heroes and seeing how they have fluctuated throughout this game. For example, Teamer, I have floated him back and forth between cavalry and archers. Quite frankly, a lot has changed with a lot of the heroes that we have nowadays, and the meta is always changing, the meta is always shifting. There's going to be heroes that get bumped down in value, there's going to be heroes that you will see a revival of value, such as that being Frederick Barbarossa. We all know Frederick Barbarossa has seen a little bit of a revival in usage with the release of Cyrus. Now, with that being said, let's get into the video. So, today's Hero Rewind is going to be all about Leonidas. Yes, the first edition of the Hero Rewind series is about our boy Leonidas. Spoiler alert, I do still use him to this day as a full-time lineup, and he is my fourth liner. He is my fourth liner with Vlad, Boudica, and Leo. But what we're going to go over this video is just quickly go over his skills, his stars very briefly, but then we're going to actually talk more detailed about his skills, how I have built him to be usable in the end game as a main support DPS role. And then towards the end of the video, I'm just going to straight up tell you where I think he is good to be usable. Is he still good to invest in? All that jazz. So, his AoE skill is going to be dealing a 3 target enemy troop in a fan-shaped area. Every time your troop loses 1% of units, increases the damage by 2% up to 100%. Now, a lot of people don't realize this, but this AoE actually deals more damage than Boudica's primary commander skill. Yes, it's true. Boudica does bring a bit of a heal, but she's only hitting 355% damage, and on top of that, they do have the same amount of rage upon entering combat. You got to keep that in mind, okay? So Leonidas in the early game is very, very, very strong. His second skill, Unyielding Soul. When hit by a normal attack, there is a 24% chance to deal might damage to the attacker, damage rate of 125%. When your troops' units fall below 50%, increases your damage dealt by 5%. This is a passive skill. It's going to always be casted. It's going to always be popping off. The damage isn't great. It really isn't. However, when you do go below 50% units, that 5% damage boost, what that essentially does is, a lot of the times when you hit 50% units, that's when you start outputting less and less damage, and some people, depending on how far their city is, might just recall their troops once they hit 50%. People do that. But with this 5% damage bonus, what this does, it's going to ensure that as the fight goes on, you are dealing a adept amount of damage. You're going to always be dealing a noticeable amount of damage as the fight goes on. So that's nice. He comes pre-built with Tendency, Vigilance, Counterattack, Kingsblade, Fearless Retribution, and Whirlwind Sweep. Personally, what I'm going to recommend with Leonidas is go for a Tendency build. You want Tendency because with Fearless Retribution, he's got a 20% chance excuse me, sorry about that. He's got a 20% chance to cast a counterattack damage, dealing 80% damage, and healing your troops. So if you have Tendency on Leonidas plus Fearless Retribution, you actually have a Warrior Pikeman hero who is built to deal damage output as well as support. Now, okay, I know what you're thinking. Hold on a second, Lizard. Hold on, back up. Leonidas 2025, what the heck? And yeah, I know. Let me explain. As I said in the beginning of the video, I do still use him and he is my fourth liner. But there is a specific way that I have built my Leonidas to make him viable in the endgame as a support DPS. So, whether you want to run Vlad primary or Cyrus primary. Oh yeah, keep in mind, the Leonidas, let's just get one thing straight before we get too much into the video. Leonidas' endgame value is strictly as a second pikeman lineup. Your first pikeman lineup is always going to be a Vladimir Cyrus Mansa or a Cyrus Vladimir Mansa. Let's just get that out the way, okay? Uh, this is the end game we're talking about here, and then we'll talk about the early game value towards the end of the video, like after we're done talking about this. So end game value with Leonidas. You're going to have your Vlad primary or Cyrus primary, depending on whoever primary you want for your first pike march. I personally prefer Cyrus the Great with Otto and Mansa. It's just an amazing support role. You're supporting your entire march. Cyrus is hitting 3 targets, very hard to take down. Vlad is going to be there to be your main DPSer, okay? He's going to carry your damage with the highest numbers, AoE, area of effect, 100 rage upon entering battle. Well, with Leonidas, how you're going to make this build supportive is Fearless Retribution and Tendency along with Lifesaver. You want to have Lifesaver on Leonidas, okay? This is just hand in hand. Look, Leonidas has this heal going out every 9 seconds, okay? And then every skill cast, he's got this heal. When you're building Leonidas for the end game role, you want to have Lifesaver on him because he's constantly throwing out heals. This is very similar to my Lagertha build that I talked about in a previous video, where if we take a look at Lagertha, she is constantly throwing out a heal with her third star. With her third star, she's going to be recovering units. So you throw on Lifesaver on Lagertha, she's not doing a whole lot of heals, but because she's triggering heals a whole lot, just like Leonidas is, every time you trigger that heal from Fearless Retribution and Tendency, you are triggering 3 seconds where you're going to be having all damage taken reduction, okay? So you want to have Lifesaver on your Leonidas, okay? The ring that I recommend for Leonidas, and is actually going to be the next ring that I'm grabbing, and that is Ring of the Falcon. This Ring of the Falcon is going to work hand in hand, not just with Leonidas having healing effects, giving you an additional healing effect. This is essentially Lifesaver 2.0. Every time you throw out a heal, you're going to trigger Lifesaver. Every time Ring of Falcon triggers, you're either going to just heal more troops or have troop damage taken reduction for 3 seconds, okay? So the way you can look at this is Lifesaver 2.0. If you fall on the troop damage taken reduction, that's going to stack with Lifesaver, and now you're going to have a higher percentage damage taken reduction. So with the end game Leonidas build, you're going to want to have Ring of Falcon paired with Lifesaver. This guy right here. This guy and the Ring of Falcon are what you want to pair them together with. Alright, now, as I said towards the start of the video, that this Leonidas endgame build is strictly for a secondary pike march lineup. Now, whether you have the primary is not a tricky question. We're not even gonna talk about the primary at all, because the primary is either gonna be a Vlad III or a Cyrus the Great. End of story. Now your second in command, Richard will work. Richard will work if you've got him 5-starred up. Frederick Barbarossa will work. So if you've got a Freddy, a Richard, or a Boudica, you're gonna throw them in here. I prefer Boudica because it just deals a bit more damage, and Boudica does come with Tendency. With this build, you're gonna want to run double Tendency so that when this skill does trigger, you're gonna be getting. You're just buffing. You're going to be, with Boudica having Tendency, you are buffing Leonidas' heal, because anytime that Boudica triggers her heal, it's just a heal on top of another heal. Now, granted, Boudica doesn't have Lifesaver on this build. The reason being is that I think that she should increase her healing effect as much as possible. So, how do I do this? Steppe Horse. Strategy and armor with renewal. Renewal. Mounted heroes healing effect increases by a percentage. Now, strategy and armor is also increased. Armor is going to be giving you some survivability. Boudica, with this build, you're going to want to give her the highest amount of strategy as well as might. Strategy and might and armor. Put on Ring of the Lily. Ring of the Lily, increase recovery rate on the strategy bonus. You've got Boudica throwing out heals. You've got Boudica dealing out damage. You've got Boudica dealing out more damage and increasing your hero's might for 6 seconds. Look, this build's a no-brainer, okay? I'm in the middle of Desolate Desert right now. Right now I'm in the middle of Desolate Desert, and we have been using this build the entire Desolate Desert. I kid you not. This entire Desolate Desert we have been using this build, and it is phenomenal. It's really, really good. Really, really good. It's a fourth lineup, right? Keep in mind, you're not going to be having Leonidas in the endgame as your primary pikeman lineup. You're doing something wrong, but this is your end game Leonidas fourth liner build, okay? So now that we have talked about that and kind of gotten that out the way, we went over the build of Leonidas, what hero pairings with Leonidas, how to use him in the endgame, and how to turn him into a support role in the endgame. Let's now shift into the early game. So, is Leonidas worth getting in 2025? I'm going to say yes if you're starting out, and if you can take him to 5 stars as soon as possible. I regret not taking him to 5 stars in the early game, and now it's just not super worth it unless if you're a high spender. If you're in the end game and you're a high spender who just has the money to throw, you want a second Warrior Park Pikeman March, sure, take Leonidas to 5 stars. You probably won't regret it, but I'm going to say he's only worth getting in the early game, and if you can take him to 5 stars off the rip. He's going to provide you great value because he deals more damage than Boudica. In the early game, you can run a Leo, Richard, Freddy. You're going to dominate the early game, and then Boudica comes out. You're just going to have her. And then up until Mansa Musa comes out, if you have a Leonidas 5 star, well, boom, now you just run a Mansa Musa Boudica with Leo. And then by the time Cyrus and Vlad come out, you're just going to build your second pikeman lineup. Leonidas is going to provide you a lot of value from the early game, and people that talk down on Leonidas probably don't use him enough. It's provided me great value because everything that I'm telling you about is what I've done. You get him in the early game, he's going to carry you a lot of value into the end game, and there's going to be a bit of a dip when after Cyrus comes out, you might have a struggle building a second pike march, but once that Vladimir comes out, who is a very strong primary, you're going to boom, second pike march. There we go. So, is Leonidas worth it in 2025? I think he's worth using in the end game if you have the right equipment, the right rings, the right mounts, as I have shown to you, and the right hero pairings. Abso-freaking-lutely, he's worth using it in 2025. Is he worth getting in 2025? Probably only in the early game. In the end game, only for high spenders who can max him out instantly, because Leonidas really does need to be 5-starred. He works for me just because I know what I'm doing when it comes to pikemen. Anyways, my name is Lizard Jesus. This has been the Hero Rewind series talking about Leonidas, and I hope you all enjoy. I will see you in the next one. Peace.